First, can folks see the PowerPoint screen? Yes, in the chat. Or,
looks good.
Thanks, Eric.
Yep.
So we have quarterly meetings for those that are new to the Healthy Watersheds partnership. And this is the first of 4 meetings that we'll have this year. Again, this meeting is being recorded so we can post it on the portal. And I think that's it. So most of you probably are already on the Healthy Watersheds Partnership listserv. That's why you're here. But if you aren't, it's super easy to join, so you can keep tabs on and the agendas. And when we have products and things to share, we share that out through that listserv as well. So if you go to our homepage, and then there's a little contacts link, and you click this button, and the instructions are there for joining. Like I mentioned previously, now there's over 50 of us, so roll call is a bit much, a lot of talking over each other. So please add your name and affiliation into the chat so that everyone can get to know everyone. I don't have any major announcements or updates. That's kind of what what the agenda is for me today. Other than, like I mentioned before, I'm writing solo for the first 2 meetings this year. Allie is out, the singular Healthy Watersheds Partnership co-chair. I'm the technical lead for the partnership, so I'll be trying to run the show, but we'll be doing it together. Just a quick overview of what's on the docket today. Mostly some updates, a little refresher on what we've been working on over the past almost 2 years now, and where we'd like to go. And as you can see with the lead column, it's a lot of me. I don't love talking into the void. So please feel free to jump in with questions, use the chat, raise your hand. I'd really like this to be conversational and a discussion so that everyone can engage. And I'd also like to check in with you towards the end of the meeting today about what you would like future meetings to look like. I know this is a 2-hour meeting. It's a commitment. It's a substantial chunk of our Zoom-filled, Teams-filled days. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And I want to make sure for future meetings, you want to come and it's useful for you to participate. So we'll chat a little bit about that. Are there any questions, or does anyone else have any quick updates they would like to provide to the group? All right, people are just kind of snuggled in, ready to go. So since August or so of 2019, we've been starting to think about and work on developing an interactive watershed assessment dashboard that can do a statewide assessment of watershed health that anyone could utilize, the public to agencies. It's not behind a paywall or requires, expensive software to utilize. And in August, we started this by kind of beginning our journey with defining what watershed health is to us as a partnership, among a number of other terms. So we conducted a literature review. We had discussion on, what the term should mean, and wordsmithing of them to make sure that that we all can kind of come to consensus about them, and that would inform the rest of the assessment. So kind of laying the foundation. Those terms are now in the Healthy Watersheds Partnership glossary, along with the literature that we referenced or used to develop those definitions. Some of them are straight from the literature. Some of them we tweaked a little bit. And then where the literature is available online, we've added a link so you could go directly to that source. Once we had our definitions, we wanted to kind of develop a conceptual model that would inform the data sets that we would want to use for the dashboard. And as you're all aware, watershed health is a complicated thing, so it's not easy to do a single conceptual model that captures everything, and we totally acknowledge that. And there are lots of ways to conceptualize watershed health and what we're talking about. So, but this is something that we as a partnership kind of agreed upon, and it's on the Healthy Watersheds Partnership Assessment webpage with some explanation. And then we also kind of compiled a list of data sets that could be helpful in not only developing the first iteration of our landscape assessment dashboard, but useful for anyone interested in data sets regarding watershed health. And that's some of those are available on the relevant data and tools page. And then we also have a Google Sheet with a massive list. So if you, I think that's from the August 2020, maybe the May 2020 meeting. And so there should be a link in the agenda there, but if you're having trouble finding it, please feel free to email me and I can get that to you. And I might even post it on the like the document section of today's agenda on the meetings page. So with the foundation set, we know we've agreed upon what watershed health means to us. We've thought about data sets. Now we have to think about doing the actual thing, right? Conducting the assessment and how we want to do that. And we have been building upon the 2013 integrated assessment. But we want to kind of like modernize that and add in new data sets and again, make it interactive and publicly facing instead of just developing a report that someone might read some of it once and then it just gets dusty on the shelf, right? So this was, we had a discussion in August about the general workflow of how the dashboard might, go through and conduct the assessment, which how we would filter the data and have those kind of options available to users. And so this is what we talked about and discussed. And so later today, I'll do a demo of the Our Shiny dashboard that hopefully reflects this workflow that we talked about in August. We also, you'll notice on the workflow here, there's just a button that says run assessment. Like that's where all the fun stuff happens. It's just reflected in one little thing. So we kind of blew that up a little bit and talked about how, like what mathematically would be happening when we conduct the assessment. And again, this is just a visual representation of that. We haven't finalized anything here. And so kind of getting ahead of myself, but what will happen is as we develop the dashboard and start adding in the calculations and things like that, we'll bring this back to the meetings, we'll have people test it, we'll make tweaks and things like that. So just because it's on a graphic here does not mean that anything is finalized. So here we are. If you guys have been here before, you'll be familiar with this phrase. I'm not as far as I wish I was, but I was able to develop the draft dashboard structure, which I'll do a demonstration with that in a second. And this is kind of a screenshot of what the front page, the home page would look like with some general background on what the Healthy Watersheds Partnership is and what the dashboard is supposed to do. And then the next steps would be to get your feedback today on how that flow works for you. Hopefully you all would utilize the dashboard. So kind of getting some user feedback in the early stages so that if we need to restructure anything, that's helpful to know now. my goal between now and the next meeting is to actually start linking the dashboard to the data and start adding in those calculations and have something where we can see the beginnings, at least, of a watershed assessment. I'd also like to, as we're, I think, all aware, there's a lot of data out there, but the folks that collect the data, the water boards included, we only have so many resources, so it's not a perfect data set sometimes. So I'd like to conduct a data disparity analysis just so we can kind of get an understanding of if there are areas where we might need different types of data to improve the assessment in the future, or if there are data sets that are quite thorough, but there might be some gaps in data collection to be aware of in terms of our confidence of the calculations in those areas and the scores in those areas. And then I think something that's not on this slide that would be a next step is right now this dashboard is kind of in a sandbox on my own computer, but I'd like to put it so on our Shiny server so that people can play around with it as well and test it out for yourself. Are there any questions at this point?
Anna, are you going to talk at all about, Anna, this is Eric, are you going to talk all about requirements or formats for the source data? So like, I understand you're going to be running, these analysis for watershed health and stream health, and for like stream health, does it all come through swamp? So only data that's in the swamp data. Are you going to be talking about those issues today, or is that something we'll talk about at a later meeting?
We'll probably talk more in depth about that later, but I don't, as like an initial response to that, we aren't only limiting the data sets to swamp or waterboard data. I think we all know that, other agencies, Fish and Wildlife, even OEHA have data that might be helpful and informative for either conducting the assessment or conceptualizing it. So we'll obviously be using swamp data and seeded data because we do have confidence in the quality of the data, or at least understanding the quality of the data through the different QA/QC processes that we have. But we won't be limiting to that, although we probably, I think, in our long Google sheet of data sets, there are like over 100 records, 100 rows of potential data sets that we could use, and we're not going to use all of them for certain reasons, either data gaps, quality, whatever. If that helps a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So you'll have some sort of minimum data standards or formats that the data would need to be put into in order, like down the road, if people wanted to say, hey, I have this great data set, I'd like to include it so that you can update the stream health assessment with this new data set from my area. As you'll provide some sort of data structure that we can use for that, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else have thoughts? Great. Also, if you have had a meeting with me or been in a meeting with me in the past, I take silence from the audience, especially since all I see are initials, as like enthusiastic and visceral excitement and agreement to what I'm saying. So if you have questions or something else, then please speak up. Great. Okay, so let's get into, so this is the dashboard. Like you saw on the slide, there's a little bit of information on the introduction. And then there's a left-hand navigation that'll kind of walk you through the process, and I'm hoping that it reflects the workflow graphic that we went over a couple of slides ago. So the first step would be kind of determining the spatial scale and extent of the assessment, as well as the temporal extent. So I think we'll start with a watershed scale at HUC 12. And then once we kind of have that refined and agreed on, yeah, that's looking like what we want, then we'll kind of go deeper and add the ability to look at a stream reach or water body scale. Because as we know, if we're trying to use this assessment to inform decisions, like a HUC 12 isn't really helpful if you're looking at a specific stream reach or a city or whatever. The spatial extent, maybe you don't want a statewide assessment. Maybe you just want to look at a certain region or a couple different parts of the state. So you'll be able to check where you want your assessment to be conducted. And then the temporal extent, currently we're just going to figure out how our watersheds are doing now in the current time frame. In the future, I think it'd be really interesting and helpful to incorporate how our watersheds might do under different climate change scenarios to help inform different decisions, management or otherwise in that way. So that's something that we'll kind of work towards as well. Then you'll go to, another thing for the configuration. So certain things will be selected automatically as like the default, and then users will be able to change that as they wish. Same with data set collection or the data set selection. We'll have data sets listed that will inform the different scores that we'll be calculating through the assessment. So watershed conditions, stream health, and watershed vulnerability. And so if you're a user and you want to kind of tweak the data sets to see how things change in terms of the assessment scores, you'll be able to do that. And then also one of the things that is really shaping this assessment is we want to use publicly facing data sets, open data sets, so that we can allow users to download data at every step of the way, after it's been filtered, once the scores are run, and then at another time, so that folks can, download the data sets and continue conducting analysis or research outside of the dashboard and bring it into your own software platforms, GIS, Tableau, Power BI, R, whatever, floats your boat. But you can add that into your analyses in a way that's already structured and filtered the way that you want it to be. Then we'll go to that Run Assessment button. This page will essentially have a transparent but brief, hopefully, description on what clicking the Run Assessment button means. So what exactly is happening in the background to help improve folks' understanding of how they should interpret the results, and to just be more informed about what's happening with their watersheds. And then there would be the ability to view the results through probably a series of maps, because maps are great and we all love them. And then the ability to download the results again as a CSV, so that you can utilize them and upload them to whatever you want to do. And then beyond that, the results are one thing, but as we all know, understanding confidence in the results, where the variability is, how specific indices might change, or what's weighing the score one way or another, is also really important to inform our understanding of the scores. So we'll have analyses like that provided on this page, and they'll probably reflect, at least at the beginning, the types of analyses that were conducted in the 2013 integrated assessment. And then based on feedback from everyone here, we can build that out to make it more useful and helpful for interpreting your results. And then you'll be able to add some context to the scores. A lot of us have been concerned and interested in how, environmental health intersects with racial justice, environmental justice, beneficial uses, all of that sort of stuff that wouldn't necessarily be used to conduct the assessment, but would be useful to see it side by side to provide some context. We like to provide the ability for users to kind of toggle between the results and different layers that might be helpful. So we have some ideas: regulatory boundaries, beneficial uses. There's the Water Board has a new the BPMP. Nick, what's that thing called? Anyway, it's a great new
best management practice.
No, the GIS thing that has all the beneficial uses.
Basin Plan Mapping Portal.
Yes, Basin Plan Mapping Portal. So there's this great new resource that the folks at the Water Board have been putting together that kind of is mapping beneficial uses throughout the state. So we'll be able to hopefully pull that in and have that inform and contextualize the results. But again, this is something that will build up over time. So if there are things that now you'd like to see, please let me know. But also feel free to shoot me an email, offline if you think of something. I often have really great ideas at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So feel free to shoot me an email when that happens for you. And then again, we'd be focusing on publicly facing and publicly available data so that users can download those results and again, do whatever they want with them outside of the dashboard.
Anna, this is Eric again. Just so have you looked at like the stuff that like in BIOS, right? There's a whole set of like the areas of conservation importance. Yeah. Are there any? So these are sort of, I think, very kind of water board centric. Are there things in BIOS that some of these other overlays, like the areas of conservation significance or things like that, that we could think about as well?
Yeah, I really want to utilize data sets in BIOS. I have conflicting feelings because it's kind of behind a wall in terms of like getting full access to it. So I would need to talk with BIOS folks about if I would be able to link it up, because I personally am able to get behind that wall, and I have a password and everything like that, so I can access the full data sets. But I know what's publicly facing is a little bit different. So I need to figure out like what the sweet spot would be there in terms of utilizing those data sets, but then also making sure that they meet our open data standards and that everyone would be able to access it through this dashboard, if that makes sense.
Anna, this is Lance.
Hey, Lance.
I think BIOS has like APIs. Like you can, for example, if you're in like ArcGIS portal, you could bring in a layer from BIOS using a URL, a REST API, and I think you can do something similar in R, at least in R Shiny. You can overlay it with like a leaflet applet, which is like a mapping widget for R Shiny. Yeah,
so like I know those things are possible, and hopefully that was someone from Fish and Wildlife almost jumping in. 1 second. My concern is I don't want to take advantage of those like direct links that are only accessible to people that have like a password or whatever.
Oh yeah, you don't need a password to use these
the APIs. Okay.
No, you don't.
Great.
Yeah. So
this is. Oh, go on. Sorry.
I'm pretty much done.
Okay, sorry for jumping in. This is Elijah Portugal from Fish and Wildlife, and I'm sure you probably already know Anna, but I'm happy to, if you haven't already met Daniel Rankin from the department from DFW. He's essentially he was the BIOS data manager for many years, and he may have moved on officially from that role, but I know he's still involved in it. So if you haven't been in touch with him yet and you are interested in figuring out more of the technical details behind using that data, he'd be a good person to talk with. I mean, I know, as Lance was saying, that there's a pretty clear sort of public-private wall sort of built into BIOS, and that, you know, the public data sets, the majority of them on there are publicly available, and then there's other ones that, for whatever reason, folks aren't ready to share publicly.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. That was Daniel Rankin.
Yeah, I'll email you his contact information.
Awesome, that'd be great. Thanks so much, Elijah. All right. Cool. Right. So then, as with any, I think, dashboard or website or anything these days, there's also going to be an additional resources page where we can link to different websites, the white papers that might have informed the assessment. And then I would also like to add a section for similar or complementary tools that are being developed or already developed by other folks. I know Eric and team at Squirp are working on a tool that would really complement the dashboard, and kind of on our Healthy Watersheds Partnership website, we would potentially go into detail about, you know, when it's appropriate to use which tool, and, you know, which tool is the best for the job that you're trying to do, that sort of thing. But also having something like that here so that people can kind of continue with their assessment, analysis, curiosity, whatever, as, you know, appropriate for their objectives. And I know there's a lot of work being done by a bunch of different folks, different agencies, CNRA, others that are trying to assess how forests are, or watersheds, or whatever. So this is something that's kind of a hot topic right now. And so I'd like to be able to be sure we reference all of those other efforts and all of that great work that's happening, so that we can kind of complement each other and make sure everyone's, I don't know, big kumbaya, happy analytical family, I guess.
And do you want us to just email those to you?
Yeah, that'd be great. Actually, there's one of the next things, I didn't talk about it here, but there is a page, excuse me, on the website. I can actually go there. The relevant data and tools page. So this has the data sets, or the core data sets that I mentioned previously. And then there's this tool section that is empty because we haven't compiled anything yet, but I know a lot's out there. And I'm hoping that, you know, all of you have your own expertise and can kind of help compile the tools that you rely on, that you have built, that you manage. And so there's this button here at the bottom that is a brief Google form. You don't need a Google account to utilize it. If you have issues with using it, feel free to email me. And then you'll notice I don't think anything is really required. So just providing as much information as you can about the tool or dashboard or whatever word you want to use to describe the thing. And then links to it, that sort of thing. So you can just fill this out. But if you're not a fan of Google Forms, you could also always email me.
Great, thank you.
Let's see. Like way ahead on our agenda. Maybe I was talking too fast. Does anyone have additional questions or thoughts about the dashboard at this point? It's not as exciting because we can't like talk about all the things yet, I realize, but we're getting there.
And Anna, what do you see as the process? I mean, if you're going to talk about this later, when you get into the sort of back end, right? Your sort of 3 boxes of the sort of like what you call the fun stuff, right? The back end piece. What is the process that you're envisioning, with this group in terms of, there's lots of decisions that go into there in terms of how you combine data sets and what sort of weighting you might use and all that. So what's the process you envision for kind of working through a lot of those decisions? Are you going to have a smaller technical work group, or are you going to do it and just send it back to this group for feedback? Or I'm just interested in kind of the process you want to go you're thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would love, obviously, to at some point bring it back to the group and have a larger discussion, but I also realize that some folks may not feel comfortable in having that technical expertise. So having, I think, a technical work group would be, ideal. But I also realize that all of us are stretched very thin as it is. So it'll really depend on, I think, how this group wants to move forward with that. I think you know who you are if we have emailed you separately and said, hey, what do you think about this? Eric, you're one of those folks. And there are many others, so we could always do it that way as well. But I think having a more formalized technical group would be really great. I think initially, at the very minimum, we'll just kind of replicate as like the starting point, replicate what was conducted in the 2013 assessment. And then from there, we can kind of tweak things and have deeper discussion about how things should be weighted, the different weighting options there might be that people could use, and then kind of determining what we as a partnership think is, the recommended, the recommended weighting, and then other options for folks as well.
Okay. Well, I'm happy if you're gonna, if you're thinking about convening a smaller work group to just talk through some of those issues at certain intervals. I'm happy to participate on that.
Great. Thanks, Eric.
Hey, Anna, this is Josh Westfall with LA County Sanitation. I think I would just follow up on Eric's question and obviously your response with, do you have thoughts on the timing or like the time sequencing of things? Like, would you prefer to wait until the data are assembled as well as can be before thinking about a direction for integration and dashboards, or do we want to kind of do them in tandem, or some other option? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, let's see, how do I want to respond to that? I'd love to do all the things at once, because that's kind of, I feel like it's all happening at the same. Although realistically, unfortunately, this isn't my only responsibility in terms of like workload and technical capabilities. So what I have a feeling will happen is I'll get the data set filed, collected, hopefully have some sort of like draft something that I can show to folks, be it the technical group or the larger Healthy Watersheds partnership. And then we can kind of go from there. We have talked a little bit last year about weighting options. So I do have a little bit of guidance from the partnership then, but I think, as Eric alluded to, we need to talk more deeply about that and have really focused discussions. So those just will happen as they can, but I think it's really helpful to have a thing to test and to try and to break before we have those discussions, so that we can kind of, it's more of an interactive process, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question, Josh?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Might not have. I feel like I rambled a little bit for a second.
It's kind of a rambling topic, though.
Yeah, and I don't like pretend to think that I am the expert of all things and know the best way forward. I think that's the benefit of this partnership, is all of us being able to like work with and lean on each other and lean on each other's expertise and recommendations. So the easy question is, I don't know how it's gonna happen, but I'll bring it back to the group, and hopefully you guys can kind of guide us on how we move forward with this, because in the end, this isn't Anna's super cool unicorn dashboard of science. Like, it's the Healthy Watersheds Partnership dashboard. So it's a product for you, hopefully informed and led by you as a partnership. But yeah, we'll figure it out. Anyone else?
I like Anna's super cool dashboard of science.
That can be our street name for it, to get the dashboard street cred. Dashboard of science. All right. You guys, my coffee's kicking in. I'm getting a little bit weird. Bear with me. Okay, so just with the data and tools page that I brought up before, there's also a research and data gaps page that we haven't really talked about, and I wanted to set aside some time to kind of brainstorm, or at least get the juices flowing with people. And the point of this page on the website is hopefully we have things that folks in the partnership would like to have in terms of research, data, whatever, but doesn't limited research, whatever. Kind of put that somewhere prominent where folks who, graduate students, NGOs, other agencies, whatever, who say, okay, it's time to do new research, or we want to advance something related to environmental health, healthy watersheds, they can kind of know to come here and have confidence that groups from different state, federal agencies, NGOs, community groups have kind of put their heads together and agreed that these are the things that are of a priority to the partnership in terms of having a need to utilize them in making decisions, to improving our very own dashboard, whatever that might be. So my question to you is, what research would you like to see happen? I know there's a lot going on, there's a lot of work happening, but think pie in the sky, big dreams, unlimited resources, right? Like, what do you as a partnership, as an individual and your respective affiliation, what do you need to do more work, better work relating to healthy watersheds? If that makes sense. Discuss. And then if you don't feel super comfortable talking about this in front of everyone, there's, you guessed it, a Google form at the bottom of the research and data gaps page. And it's very simple, just like the other one. You can provide your email address or not. These forms essentially come to me, and the only reason I would use your email address is to follow up to get more detail. It's not like I would be, publishing on the website or anything like that. But you provide a description of the gap, research, data, otherwise, again, relevant links, and then that's pretty much it.
And I'll throw out a few ideas, since there was, silence, and, I never have a shortage of ideas. But, I think that, the unicorn dashboard is great starting point, but I think as, watershed management community, right, the two of the big things that we always struggle with, right, is kind of relating condition to stress, and you've got all the pieces here. So I think if there's ways we could think about building in some additional analytical tools that would sort of harness the power of the kind of spatial scale of data that you're pulling together to explore relationships between condition and stress at sort of large spatial scales. So I was looking at the other relevant data and tools you have listed, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that you can mine data out of, right, for that. And there could be some data tools that are maybe developed, right, that would help with that analysis. And then similarly, I know one of the three major categories is vulnerability. And I think, for example, if you just overlaid the category 1 water bodies as a starting point, right, with such the emphasis on protecting high quality waters, I think, again, on the same type of thing, maybe we can think about other data tools or analytical tools that could be developed to support either future category 1, evaluations, or even identifying management actions that could keep category 1 water bodies in category 1, essentially. Right?
Right.
So I think that's kind of a broad class, right, of things that would really, the first step obviously is bringing all of this together into sort of the dashboard and compiling it. But that's where I think the fun stuff starts, is building some of those tools that the dashboard could help people sort of explore the data in some of those ways. And, again, at these larger spatial scales.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing, which is probably further down the road, would be to see if there's ways you could begin to mine some of the grant funding programs that have identified where different watershed projects have been funded. There's a lot of money that's gone out for things like fish passage barrier removal or other, stream restoration. And I know those are super hard data sets to get, to work with. But even if there was some way to integrate them as even point files or something, right, to know where some of those bond funded projects have occurred, that would be another great, I think, layer to start thinking about.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. And then Jeannie, I see your hand up.
Yeah, hi. My name is Jeannie Mesha. I work in Division of Water Quality at the State Water Board, and I manage the non-point source 319 grant program. And so I was actually going to ask about whether this dashboard or this tool would benefit from that kind of information. I wasn't sure if you were just looking at, scientific indicators of watershed health, or if you were looking at kind of social or other types of actions that could contribute to watershed health, like grant projects, installing fencing to keep cattle out of streams, or installing, habitat structures in streams, or implementing irrigation management plans on agricultural fields, or nutrient management plans. Just because I don't think we don't have a good way of monitoring the actual effectiveness of those individual projects yet. We're trying to figure out how to do that, but we don't actually go out and take water quality samples to make sure, or to see if those projects are actually affecting water quality. We're just hoping that they are.
Right.
But we do have that data for our program, at least in shape file. I think it's points right now. It's could use some fine tuning to make sure that we actually have the project locations accurately represented, but we could provide that. And I think that would be really helpful.
Is that something that data set, I can imagine it maybe containing sensitive information, but is that something that you all would kind of want to push to an open data platform like the open data portal or something like that, or be okay with us utilizing it and then people being able to download, the data minus sensitive information, of course?
Yeah, I think so. Right now, our points are, our pre-project implementation. So it's and sometimes it's just a HUC 12. So I know that's not that useful, but we are, in our grant agreements, we are pushing more towards requiring grantees to provide GIS data of the actual implementation locations. So, where they installed a fence, or, what field or what, farm area has been, addressed with the project. And we're just starting that, so we may get some pushback from grantees on providing that information, but we are putting it in some agreements now, and so eventually I think the data set would become more fine-tuned and more accurate in terms of geographic location. So I think we just have to wait and see how that's going to play out with our grantees, and how, yeah. So.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful.
Okay.
Thanks, Katie. Oh, Nina? I see your hands raised, or was? Or did I do that on accident?
Here I am now. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if you had data or were interested in it. I don't have the data, but some of the work that's being done on some of the timber and lands around the state and some of the data, for example, that the Forest Service might have. And I understand there are efforts underway by the state to collect data on the condition of the areas. Fire data, for example, might be very important for past fires. Those sorts of data, to me, inform, a healthy watershed.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think some of those data sets might be available, or you might be able to get a hold of folks who could link you in with them.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so CAL FIRE has a data set named it's the Treatable Landscape. So it's areas within the state responsibility area that are deemed to be at high or severe risk of fire threat, I think that may not be the official definition, but that might be a useful layer. And that's area that's targeted for fuels reduction.
Great. Elijah, I see your hands up.
Hi, yeah, thanks. This is maybe slightly off topic from the dashboard specifically, but I was just curious that if more broadly the Healthy Watershed Partnership is intending to be involved in work related to SB 19 and the siting of potentially new stream gauging locations. As you know, we know that the hydrological piece to watershed health is huge, particularly in this state, and just wondering if if the partnership is going to be providing some input to that working group as to where any new gauges should potentially be located.
In terms of the partnership, as me personally, I haven't been invited to contribute to that, but I think that's one of the reasons why we want to develop this dashboard, is that so folks can kind of use it to inform those types of decisions, especially when we get down to like a stream reach level or something like that, to inform where to put stream gauges, right? I think that's definitely something that we could contribute to once we have the dashboard and more data behind our particular thoughts. But if someone involved in those discussions, for example, wanted to engage with the partnership and like come give a talk and get feedback from more than just me, from the whole partnership, from the 60 plus people that are on this call, I think we would definitely welcome them having an agenda item and kind of picking our brains and getting our thoughts on gauge location, if that helps answer that question.
Yeah, if there is, and I can follow up with you about this over email, but a colleague of mine in the water branch is representing DFWs. He's involved in the working group, working on that right now. So he's somebody that I could reach out to and see if he has the time and availability to maybe do a presentation the next meeting, if you'd be interested in that.
Yeah, I think that would be great. That's actually one of the topics that is coming up, is future meeting ideas. So I think that would be awesome. And then, so our next meeting is May 12th. I don't know like what the deadline is for, or timelines are for that particular project, but if it were something where, you know, we could potentially send an email out to the listserv and have people respond to that person through a form or whatever, we can definitely do that too.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and that's kind of the sort of thing, at least in my view, of like what this partnership is for, you know, all of us are working on different things, but if something is tangentially even related to watershed health and you want some feedback from a diverse group, like let's leverage the partnership through presentations and things like that during our meetings. Yeah, thanks, Elijah. Anyone else have, like, I mean, maybe it's just me, but sometimes I like stay awake at night being like, man, I wish we had this research or the ability to conduct this research, or we had these data. Does anyone else do that, or is it just me?
I mean, this is Elijah again. One thing generally, I think that many of us would be interested in, and I know that my unit within DFW's Cannabis and In-Stream Flow unit particularly is interested, you know, in that relationship between surface water and groundwater, and how groundwater pumping influences or can dewater surface water in particular reaches. And anyway, so we, you know, there's this general understanding of the hydrologic connection, hydraulic connection between surface and groundwater, but there doesn't seem to be much data that I'm aware of in the state that is actually empirical data looking at that relationship in different places, and what sort of time scale those sort of influences from groundwater pumping can affect surface water. So more research into that is something that we're very much interested in.
Yeah, something a little less hand wavy, more here's something with some confidence around it. Yeah.
Yeah,
sometimes hand wavy is the best we got, but we can build on that. What's that, Eric?
And along those lines, I know you already have the TNC freshwater species database on your data, but they also have, right, the GDE, the groundwater dependent ecosystems layer, that might at least start to get. It's not exactly, I think, what you were talking about, Elijah, but it's maybe at least a start where we could include some overlay of the mapped groundwater dependent ecosystems, because I think they have that for the entire state.
Great.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Eric.
Okay, Wayne, have your hand up?
Yeah, you know, I kind of joined a little late, so I only really heard a couple of things, but in terms of like what kind of data we wish we could get access to a little bit better, at least in San Diego, you know, there's been a lot of questions being asked about, like, you know, when it comes to the 401 program, you know, where are all these projects? Where are all the mitigation projects? Where are all of those relative to all the other water bodies, et cetera? It would be great if there was a data set like that, if we're talking about like wish list items.
Yeah.
I know there was some effort for that a while back, but I have no idea, you know, if that is still being maintained and how it's being maintained and who's contributing or where it's even available. So, you know, this dashboard could include that information and, you know, allow people to access it and download it. I think that would go a long way to helping people see, like, what are the changes being made within a watershed as it relates to, all these 401 projects that are essentially kind of wetland related type projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Wayne. Luke, and then Elijah, is your hand up for an additional question or?
Nope, sorry, I'll put it down.
I just see you waving at me. Luke, you had a comment?
Yeah. Hi, this is Luke from Heal the Bay. I just wanted to second what Wayne said. It would be great if projects or BMPs were in this database. I don't know if it's beyond the scope of it, but I think that would be great. So we're interested in advocating for certain types of projects, and it would be great to be able to dive into that data and do some research on it.
Yeah, and I mean, even if it's something that, like you mentioned, is potentially outside of the scope of the dashboard, which I'm not saying it is or is not, we could add it potentially to our relevant data page. So yeah, that's definitely something. Great. Anitra?
Hi, I don't unfortunately get to come to these meetings very much.
Welcome.
But I'm from DWR, but my work is more really focused now on some large scale restoration work. But I wanted to mention from my previous work, I used to work with the Information Center for the Environment, and this is like, we're going back like 25 years. And there was a database that we put together called the California Watershed Projects Inventory. And then later, or I did actually, and then later it was expanded upon and it became something called NERPI, which was the Natural Resource Projects Inventory that someone else managed after I left. And then some of that data went to SFEI because they're working on a projects database too. And you probably heard of the Eco Atlas. So there's been a lot of work compiling different, projects data over the years, but unfortunately, a lot of those grants didn't continue with the Information Center for the Environment with UC Davis, which is no longer operating, but they have now a Watershed Science Center. And so they have some of the old data. SFEI had some of that data as well. And so there's been many years of effort trying to track projects, but then my understanding now is, and it's not a very, I want to say, I don't know that much about what's going on now, but I don't think all of that information has been updated very well because they depend on project managers to go in and update those data sets. And it's, all of us are very busy and we don't always do it as project managers. So there's a lot of work that's been gone. It takes so much effort to do this. So I want to say, just, if you can access what's been done already, and if you want to incorporate it or link to it, that's the best idea, I think. And just, that was sort of my previous work. I don't do this now, but I do think it's a really important thing to have available. And those are the things I know about presently.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm definitely not a fan of reinventing wheels if someone already has it built, right? So yeah, thank you so much for pointing us to those resources.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Yeah. Loretta. Or are you just waving with your hand?
I was waving and now my mic is off.
Great.
Good to see you. I don't know if you mentioned, I had to get on another call and came back in, but did you mention the statewide forest science coordination meeting and the data gap analysis we did?
I did not. Do you want to kind of give us an update on that?
Oh, super briefly, yeah. We had our second annual statewide forest science coordination meeting, which is a meeting among state and federal scientists, specifically geared to them, interfacing with 8 of the biggest statewide forest fire, type scientists out there. And when I say biggest, I mean they're doing statewide assessments that integrate carbon, biodiversity, forest structure, carbon information, all this sort of data, water quality being part of that, or at least data that could contribute to informing water quality assessments. So we had this meeting, and part of it was to really break down what are the key data ultimately was to make sure state federal scientists are very clear on the latest major funded research happening, multi-million-dollar projects in some cases, UC lab fee projects, projects CNRA has funded and so forth. These big assessments, common awareness around what they are and what they're doing. We will put out a report for all to see that, but part of that day-long meeting was to delineate what are the major knowledge gaps that persist despite all this research happening. Like, where do we still see major gaps? So there was kind of a whole discussion around different thematic areas and where those gaps are, and the extent to which they're gaps. So is it just a partial gap? Is some of it some research available, or and what is the status of the data set? So we have done that assessment. We're bringing it together, and I can furnish that to you, and then you can kind of vet what information may be of interest to the assessment. But we just did that 2 weeks ago, so I can,
Awesome.
I think this next month we'll lock it in.
Yeah, that sounds great. And definitely, when the report is ready to go, let us know and we can add it to our literature page, because I think that would be really helpful for a lot of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So nice hearing from everyone. Does anyone else have any thoughts before we keep on moving? I don't have the agenda. Let's see. Where are we? Yeah, we're way ahead of schedule, but that's all right. I don't think anyone minds being ahead of schedule and having more time gifted to them in their day, right? Okay, well, this is all really great, and these are the sorts of discussions and thoughts that we would love to capture and add to the research and data gaps discussion, and also to leverage these meetings so that we can kind of keep everyone up to date and get feedback and things like that. So if you have more research and data gaps that you think of, feel free to jump on our webpage and then fill out this quick form, and we'll get it posted on the website. Awesome. So the next thing is, as I mentioned before, the Healthy Watersheds Partnership meetings are a chunk of your time and a chunk of your day. And I want to be sure that when you join, you're excited to join the meeting and that you're getting something out of it. I think reporting out is important, but I want to be sure that you're feeling like you're getting what you need out of these meetings. So, I just wanted to, since I am running solo for this meeting and the next meeting, if folks had specific speakers or topics similar to, what Elijah brought up earlier, or something completely different, so long as it's related to watershed health, as much as I'd love to have a talk on unicorns, not related. But if you have any ideas or something that you'd like to hear from the group, I think that would be really helpful for me as I develop the next next couple of agendas. So I just kind of wanted to take a beat and see if we could brainstorm that a little bit, or if someone had any ideas. Sometimes we, at the end of a meeting, we're like, yeah, let me know if you have any ideas, and then we forget to email or life happens, right? So, getting updates from the different, from Loretta on the different projects that she's overseeing. We get to hear from that every once in a while. I think last year we had some meetings or some updates from the CalMaine group on what they're working on. But are there other areas or even research topics that you all would like to hear about during future meetings?
So Anna, in addition to all the great ideas that we heard, I think if you go back to the recording, you probably, I was sort of noting there's probably half a dozen good things that came up that would be great presentations that I'd love to hear more about. The one thing, and I know we don't have representation here, but the Forest Service has also done a lot of work on watershed assessment, and they manage a fairly significant proportion of the state's natural lands. And so I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to try to reach out and learn a little bit more about like the report cards and things like that the Forest Service has developed for their watershed program, and if there's ways to incorporate some of that into some of this process.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Hi, yeah, this is Gabriel Venegas. I'm the regional hydrologist for the U.S. Forest Service. And
Awesome.
yeah, sorry, I did not attend previous meetings, but I find this very interesting in terms of, and Nina Hemphill can chime in as well, because she also used to work for the U.S. Forest Service and is now with the BLM state office. But one of the interests, of course, is watershed health in terms of the water board's permitting. And we are going through right now a couple of a permit process to develop permits across, I believe it's about 16 of our national forests, and we have 18 national forests here in the state. So the Central Valley and the Lahontan cover pretty much, a good chunk of our forests. And of course, it's one of the issues that we're looking at in trying to come up with is an assessment of watershed and watershed health. And so that's what got me interested in this, and wanted to hear more about what it is that you're developing and how it could be used for this particular process that we're going through with the Central Valley of Lahontan. But going back to the question, we do have a significant amount of information. A lot of it not current, but certainly available to the public, and we do have that available online. And so yeah, if at any time you're more than welcome to reach out, and we can schedule some time and talk more about what it is that we have that you may be able to use. But also, I was curious, because I haven't heard whether you had reached out to the Forest Service and used this information for this particular issue that you're discussing here with your apps and watershed health. So.
Yeah, I know I personally haven't reached out to the Forest Service. Allie Dunn, the co-chair, may have, but I haven't spoken to her in a little while. She's out on leave. But yeah, I think we would love to connect with you and others at the Forest Service and figure out how we can help each other's efforts, right? Ideally, this dashboard, one of the reasons we aren't limiting it to water boards data only is so that it can be utilized by lots and lots of different groups to inform decisions, just like we were talking about. So yeah, I think that would be great if we could connect online.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just reach out to me and we can schedule something and discuss. I know it's certainly just me. There's other program managers that would be more appropriate to discuss, but initially we can certainly talk and then move on from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. And thanks to all of the folks that maybe haven't been able to tune in the past, but are tuning in today. That's really great to hear new and different voices. So thanks for tuning in. Anyone else have something that they'd really like to hear or talk about at a future Healthy Watersheds Partnership meeting?
Yeah, this is Elijah again, and
Elijah.
if you or if the group is interested, not at the next meeting, but sometime down the road, we're happy to give a brief presentation about the CMAF or CMAP monitoring program that we're developing. That's pretty specifically related to cannabis, but has a statewide scale. I've mentioned it before. Anyway, we could give a presentation about that at some point in the future if you're interested.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of work going on around cannabis, the water boards, and it Fish and Wildlife and elsewhere. So it'd be really great to hear from you guys when you're ready. Nina, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I've been involved with the Tulare Basin folks who are their Watershed Association. And one of the things that I think they're very concerned with is social justice. And so I don't know, and I've seen some good analyses of impacts of drinking water or other water-related issues associated with social justice. And I was thinking that it might be useful if we have anyone who has done those types of analyses, or that might be a data gap for tribal areas and for places where folks don't have the funds or the ability to filter their water when they get down into really bad water quality.
Yeah, that's great.
Or when their water disappears.
Sure. Yeah, I know. So I sit at the water boards in the Office of Information Management and Analysis, and we're interested in asking those similar questions. And so I know there's been a dashboard developed that looks at, I think, the historical redlining, and then a series of different water quality or environmental health metrics, and kind of you can see things side by side. So maybe we can get that person. I have an individual in mind, but someone to chat about that as well. Yeah, you're right. That's definitely something that I think we can all learn about. Sure. Luke?
Hi, yeah, I would like to, I second that one that was just mentioned, and I'll also add, I think it would be great to hear more about like revitalization efforts in California or elsewhere if possible, particularly in, we're based in Southern California, so of course we're interested in, more channelized systems. So yeah, hearing about revitalization efforts would be great.
Okay. That's awesome. This is great. Anyone else? Okay. Well, if you have or think of any other ideas, or even better, particular speakers, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll add my email to the chat when we are close to wrapping up, and I think it might be on the last slide. And all of these slides will be posted on our website, hopefully in the next week or so. It depends on the process of getting it posted, but it'll be there soon. And I'll also send out an email through the Lyris list, the email list, when it's posted, so folks can don't have to monitor it daily.
Hey, Anna.
Yeah.
Anna, sorry, this is Elizabeth Bettencourt with the Central Valley Water Board. I just wanted to point out, especially because they're near and dear to my heart, there's two really great ideas in the chat from Bev and from Patricia Bratcher at Wildlife for presentations and ideas and data sources. So
awesome.
Yeah,
I usually get
exactly the Watershed.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I usually get notifications that stuff's happening in the chat, and it's been quiet this whole time, and I fell for it. Okay, let me go for the oh my gosh, you guys have been so busy. Let's see. I'm just kind of scrolling through the chat really quickly. Melissa wants a unicorn dashboard for science. Thanks, Melissa. Great. Yeah, so there's a lot of good stuff in here. If people put things in the chat, that might mean that they don't necessarily feel comfortable unmuting or can't unmute because of technological reasons. So I definitely encourage folks to check out the chat. And if you have added something to the chat and you want to kind of talk more, please feel free to unmute yourself for this item or previous items. I'm so sorry, you guys, that I didn't see all the chatting happening. This is great.
Hi, Anna. This is Wendy Katagi at Stillwater Sciences, and I did put something in the chat. So we can follow up offline, but we're working in the Santa Ana Watershed on a web-based portal this summer. It should be ready for launch, but I just wanted to see how we could integrate, because the portal and data and monitoring is for a implementation of an HCP, so very targeted on T&E species recovery and sharing that data on the Comprehensive Adaptive and Management Monitoring Program with other watersheds. So we've been talking about your program as well, and just finding ways to leverage the tools and things like that. So we'll be in touch.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Wendy. Anyone else? And then Elizabeth, I'm so sorry, I got so excited about the chat, I might have cut you off. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No worries, Anna. I actually just put it in the chat. I manage the contract for the Battle Creek stuff. So if you would like to get in touch with 34 North, I'm happy to help with that.
Great. Thanks. So I'm glad you're here. Welcome. And Bev was just about to type that. So great minds. Awesome. Yeah, and so as you come up with more ideas, definitely, like I have on the bottom of the slide, I want to make sure that these meetings are worth your time. So please help me make them that way. And these are great suggestions that I'll try and lean into before May and beyond. Speaking of, so our next meeting is May 12th. If you are on the email list, you probably received a calendar invitation a little while ago. If you're new to the email list and might not have received that, a couple weeks before the meeting, I update it with the agenda and things like that. But if you want me to forward it to you, feel free to reach out to me and I can do that. In the meantime, my personal action items are going to be to keep chugging along on the landscape assessment dashboard and hopefully connect with a bunch of you that have contributed to the conversation today. And then as you think of new research and data gaps or data sets or tools, please do utilize the Google Forms on the website, or you can email me. And then any future agenda items, please shoot me an email. I'd love to connect with everyone offline and build exciting and helpful agendas for everyone. And I think that's it. Does anyone else have anything they want to bring to the group before we adjourn? We're quite a bit early today, but I don't think that's a horrible thing. Okay, I don't see any hands. Check in the chat. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for jumping on the meeting today, the Healthy Watersheds Partnership meeting today, and contributing to some really great discussions. It's nice to hear other people than me talk. I hear myself talk all the time. I'm tired of it. But it's so great to hear from you all. Eric, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I was just going to say, great job. Thanks. Great job going solo today.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, so I think we'll adjourn here and keep an eye out in the email, in your email inbox in the next week or so for links to this PowerPoint, the video recording if you had to jump in late or want to share with a friend. And all of that good stuff. And then feel free to reach out to me directly for those of you that said you wanted to connect. And we'll be talking in May. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
You too, Anna. Thanks a lot.
Bye, Anna.
Great
Thanks.
job.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.